My name is Damon Reyes. I'm 40 years old, and for 11 years I believed that hard work could actually change the world. Growing up in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio, I never had the luxury of a computer science degree from Stanford or MIT. What I had was discipline, countless late nights teaching myself to code, and an unshakable belief that if you put your heart into something, it would pay off eventually. I was wrong about that last part. For over a decade, I was the backbone of Pinnacle Tech, one of Silicon Valley's rising giants. Every single line of code that powered their cloud infrastructure came from my fingertips. While the executives in their glass offices talked strategy and threw around buzzwords like synergy and disruption, I was in the trenches, building the actual foundation that kept their $1.8 billion valuation afloat. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The irony wasn't lost on me that a kid from Ohio, whose family shopped at Walmart and considered Olive Garden fine dining, was now powering technology that Fortune 500 companies depended on daily. My salary had grown from $85,000 to $210,000 over the years. Excellent money for most places, but modest compared to the millions the C-suite was pulling in from stock options and bonuses. I didn't mind. I genuinely loved what I did. There's something almost meditative about writing clean, efficient code. Each function, each algorithm was like solving a puzzle that would make thousands of users' lives easier. I'd arrive at our Palo Alto offices at 6 a.m., grab my usual large black coffee from the lobby Starbucks, and lose myself in the work until well past dinner time. The CEO, Richard Blackwood, was a different breed entirely. At 55, he was everything I wasn't. Harvard MBA, connected family, the kind of guy who name-dropped his weekend golf games with venture capitalists. He drove a Tesla Model S Plaid, lived in a $6, $2 million house in Los Altos Hills, and had that particular Silicon Valley swagger that comes from never having to worry about a mortgage payment. For years, our relationship was professionally cordial. He'd nod approvingly during my quarterly presentations, occasionally throwing out phrases like, "Excellent work, Damon," or "This is exactly the kind of innovation that sets us apart." I thought we had mutual respect. I thought my dedication meant something to him. I was spectacularly naive. The first signs should have been obvious in retrospect. The hushed phone calls behind closed doors, was too focused on a particularly complex server optimization project to pay attention to office politics. Then came Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. I remember the date because our team had planned to celebrate completing a major security upgrade. A small tradition we'd maintained for 3 years. I was debugging a critical authentication module when the email arrived at 3:47 p.m. Pacific Time. The subject line read, "Employment status update, immediate." My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Corporate emails with that kind of language never brought good news. I clicked it open, expecting maybe a policy change or reorganization announcement. Instead, I found 4 sentences that erased 11 years of my life. Dear Mr. Reyes, after careful consideration, we have decided that your services are no longer required at Pinnacle Tech. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Please return all company property to HR by end of business today. Thank you for your contributions. That was it. No explanation, no phone call, no face-to-face meeting. 11 years of 60-hour weeks, of missing family barbecues and birthday parties, of building something from nothing, reduced to a form letter that could have been sent to anyone. I sat there staring at the screen for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The office buzzed around me, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the usual Tuesday afternoon rhythm of a tech company pushing toward quarterly targets. None of them knew yet. I was already a ghost. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was disbelief. After 11 years, after building their entire cloud infrastructure from scratch, after being the guy they called at 2 a.m. when servers crashed, this was how it ended. No severance package mentioned, no transition period, just a digital pink slip delivered with all the warmth of an automated spam filter. I could have stormed into Blackwood's corner office, could have demanded an explanation, made a scene, forced him to look me in the eye while he justified this betrayal. That's probably what he expected. Maybe even hoped for. It would have made the narrative cleaner for him. Damon was unstable, had to be removed for the good of the company. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I saved my work, backed up my personal files to a USB drive, and started cleaning out my desk methodically. 11 years of accumulated life. A small cactus plant my sister gave me. A world's best coder mug from the team's Secret Santa exchange. Photos from company retreats to Lake Tahoe and Napa Valley. Everything okay, Damon? Asked Sarah from accounting, noticing the cardboard box I'd requisitioned from the supply closet. Just reorganizing. was a blur of traffic on Highway 101 and classic rock from KQED. I kept the radio loud to drown out the questions spinning in my head. Why now? What had I done wrong? Was this really just about cost-cutting, or was there something bigger happening? That evening, I did what any rational person does when their world implodes. I ordered a large pepperoni pizza from Tony's Little Star, cracked open a Budweiser, and tried to make sense of it all. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, LinkedIn already suggesting I update my employment status with the algorithmic efficiency that only made the whole situation feel more surreal. It was while scrolling through old emails looking for any clues I might have missed that I stumbled across something from 2018 that stopped me cold. A message from my old mentor, Dr. James Harrison, who'd taught computer science at Ohio State before moving to a small consulting firm in San Francisco. The subject line read, "Patent documentation, urgent." I'd completely forgotten about this email. Back then, Dr. Harrison had reached out after hearing about some innovative work I'd done on distributed computing architecture. He'd insisted, almost demanded, that I file for intellectual property protection on a particular algorithm I'd developed for managing cloud-based data synchronization. Damon, the email read, "What you've created here isn't just clever coding. It's a fundamental breakthrough in how distributed systems communicate. File the paperwork. Trust me on this. Big companies have a way of forgetting where their best ideas actually came from." At the time, I'd thought he was being overly cautious. Pinnacle Tech was my employer. Anything I created belonged to them, right? But Dr. Harrison had been insistent. He'd even connected me with a patent attorney, Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in software patents and had a small practice in downtown San Jose. "It'll cost you about $18,000 all in," she'd explained during our phone consultation. "But if this algorithm is as revolutionary as your mentor believes, it's the best investment you'll ever make." $18,000 was nearly 5 months' salary back then in 2018. But something in Dr. Harrison's voice, some urgency I couldn't quite place, convinced me to move forward. I'd used my entire savings account and taken a personal loan from my credit union to cover the legal fees. The patent had been approved in mid-2019. System and method for autonomous data synchronization in distributed cloud environments. Patent number US 10-456-789. Filed under my name alone, Damon Christopher Reyes, as the sole inventor. I'd buried it in a folder on my personal computer and honestly forgotten it existed. Pinnacle Tech had continued using the algorithm. It was, in fact, the core technology that powered their entire cloud infrastructure. But in all the chaos of daily work, quarterly reviews, and constant feature development, the patent had become just another piece of paper. Until now. I pulled up the USPTO database and searched for my patent number. There it was, still active, still valid, with nearly 14 more years remaining on its 20-year term. The algorithm described in those legal documents wasn't just some minor optimization or clever workaround. It was the beating heart of Pinnacle Tech's competitive advantage. Every major client, from Netflix to Airbnb to dozens of Fortune 500 companies, relied on this technology to keep their data synchronized across multiple servers. It processed over 2.1 billion transactions daily and was directly responsible for approximately 78% of Pinnacle's revenue. And according to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, I owned it completely. I spent the next morning at a Pete's Coffee in downtown Mountain View, laptop open, diving deep into patent law and corporate licensing agreements. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. Pinnacle Tech had been using my patented technology for nearly 6 years without a proper licensing agreement. They'd simply assumed that because I was an employee, they owned everything I created. They were wrong. The Bayh-Dole Act and subsequent court cases were crystal clear. Unless there was a specific work-for-hire agreement that explicitly transferred patent rights, the inventor retained ownership. My employment contract from 2014, which I'd saved in my personal files, contained no such language. It was a standard tech worker agreement focused on non-disclosure and non-compete clauses, but it said nothing about patent assignment. Dr. Harrison had known exactly what he was doing. I called Rebecca Martinez, the patent attorney who'd helped me file the original paperwork. Her office was in a modest building on West Santa Clara Street, the kind of place where small-time inventors and entrepreneurs went to protect their big ideas on tight budgets. "Damon Reyes," she said, recognizing my voice immediately. "I was wondering when you'd call. I heard through the grapevine about your situation at Pinnacle." In the Silicon Valley legal community was smaller than most people realized. Word traveled fast, especially when it involved potential patent disputes worth hundreds of millions. "Rebecca, I need to understand my options here. They fired me last week, and they're still using my algorithm for everything. Let me be very direct with you," she said. "You have them by the throat, legally speaking. Every day they use your patented technology without a license. They're committing willful patent infringement. The damages could be astronomical. We met that afternoon in her office, a cramped space filled with legal books and patent diagrams, covering everything from smartphone components to biotech innovations. Rebecca was in her early 50s, a former corporate attorney who'd gone solo after getting tired of billable hour quotas and partnership politics. "Here's what I know," she said, pulling up Pinnacle Tech's SEC filings on her computer. "They've been in talks with Nexora Technologies for 6 months about a potential merger. The deal is valued at $485 million, with the transaction expected to close by mid-May." Nexora was another Silicon Valley giant, specializing in enterprise software solutions. The merger would create a powerhouse in cloud computing, combining Pinnacle's infrastructure technology with Nexora's client management systems. "The problem," Rebecca continued, "is that due diligence for a deal this size requires clean intellectual property. Nexora's lawyers will demand proof that Pinnacle owns all the technology they're acquiring. When they discover that the core algorithm is actually patented by a former employee." She didn't need to finish the sentence. "What do you want to do, Damon? We could send a cease and desist letter, demand licensing fees, or pursue full litigation. But timing is everything here." I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. How long does Pinnacle have before they need to provide IP documentation to Nexora? Based on typical merger timelines for deals this size, they probably have 4 to 6 weeks maximum for complete IP documentation and clearance. Then we wait. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Wait? I want to see how far they'll go with this merger before they realize they don't actually own their most valuable asset. Let them get comfortable. Let them start counting the money." Over the next 3 weeks, I watched the situation unfold from the outside, like a spectator at a baseball game where I was the only one who knew the final score. TechCrunch ran a breathless article about the blockbuster merger between Pinnacle and Nexora. The Wall Street Journal quoted Richard Blackwood, calling it a transformative moment for cloud computing innovation. My former colleagues were posting excited updates on LinkedIn about the opportunities ahead. Sarah from accounting shared a company-wide email about exciting changes and growth potential. Even Miguel, the security guard, mentioned to a mutual friend that there might be hiring bonuses coming. Meanwhile, I was collecting unemployment benefits and sleeping better than I had in years. The call came on a Thursday evening in late March. My phone showed an unknown number with a 650 area code, classic Peninsula business line. "Damon, this is Richard Blackwood. We need to talk." His voice had lost all its usual confidence. Gone was the smooth executive tone that had charmed investors and intimidated competitors. He sounded like a man who'd just discovered his house was built on quicksand. "Hello, Richard. I'm surprised to hear from you." "Cut the act, Damon. You know exactly why I'm calling. We just got the preliminary IP audit back from Nixora's legal team. There's a problem with patent US 10-456-789. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds, sipping my evening coffee and watching the sunset through my apartment window. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play games with me. That algorithm is the foundation of our entire platform. Our clients process billions of transactions through that system daily. If there's some kind of ownership dispute..." "There's no dispute, Richard. The patent is very clear about who invented the technology and who owns it." Another long pause. I could practically hear him sweating through the phone. "Look, we can work something out. Maybe there was an oversight in the original employment paperwork. We can backdate a licensing agreement, make this problem go away. What do you want? Stock options? A consulting contract? We're reasonable people here." "I'm sure you are, but I'm not interested in backdating anything." "That would be fraud, wouldn't it?" The silence that followed was so complete I wondered if he'd hung up. "Damon, you need to understand what you're doing here. This merger affects hundreds of jobs, thousands of clients, millions of users. You can't just blow up a $485 million deal because you're upset about being laid off." "I'm not blowing up anything, Richard. I'm just a guy with a patent who got fired by email after 11 years of loyal service. What happens next is entirely up to you." I hung up on Richard Blackwood that Thursday night feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete control over my own destiny. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. My phone rang 8 times before 9 a.m. Calls from Pinnacle's head of legal, their chief technology officer, and 3 different partners from Morrison and Forster. I let them all go to voicemail and spent the morning at my local gym in Mountain View, working through an unusually satisfying cardio session. By the time I returned home, there were 17 missed calls and a stack of emails that would have impressed a presidential campaign. The subject lines ranged from professional, urgent patent licensing discussion, to desperate, please call, time-sensitive matter. The most interesting message came from Nixora's General Counsel, Patricia Wong, a name I recognized from Forbes articles about high-stakes corporate litigation. "Mr. Reyes, this is Patricia Wong from Nixora Technologies. I believe we need to have a conversation about patent US 10-456-789 and its implications for our pending acquisition. I'm hoping we can find a mutually beneficial resolution. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Mutually beneficial. That was corporate speak for, you have us over a barrel, please don't squeeze too hard. I called Rebecca Martinez first. Damon, my phone hasn't stopped ringing since yesterday. Half the corporate law firms in Silicon Valley want to represent Pinnacle in settlement negotiations with you. The other half want to represent you in litigation against Pinnacle. I've never seen anything quite like this. What's your read on the situation? Nexora is sophisticated. They knew exactly what they were looking for in the IP audit. And when they found your patent, their deal team probably called an emergency meeting. The merger can't proceed without clear title to that algorithm. It's literally the foundation of Pinnacle's value proposition. And if I don't grant them a license, the deal dies. Simple as that. Nexora would be buying a company that doesn't actually own its core technology and could be sued for patent infringement at any moment. No board of directors would approve that acquisition. Over the weekend, the calls became increasingly frantic. Richard Blackwood himself showed up at my apartment complex on Saturday morning, standing in the parking lot next to his Tesla, looking like a man who'd aged 5 years in 5 days. I watched him from my second-floor window for about 10 minutes, debating whether to go down. Finally, my sense of curiosity won out. "Damon, thank God," he said when I appeared. "We need to resolve this situation." He looked terrible. His usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "I'm listening. Name your price. Stock options, cash settlement, a position on our board of directors. Whatever you want, we'll make it work." What I wanted was to not be fired by email after 11 years of building your company. But that ship has sailed. Look, I made a mistake. The layoffs were handled poorly. I should have called you personally. Should have offered you a severance package. Should have shown more respect for your contributions. But we can fix this. It was fascinating, watching a man who'd wielded absolute power over my life just weeks ago now, begging for mercy in a suburban parking lot. "Richard, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to license my patent to whoever wants to use it. Fair market rates, standard terms, no exclusivity agreements. If Pinnacle wants to continue using my technology, they can pay for it just like everyone else. But the merger, that's your problem, not mine." The following Monday brought the news I'd been expecting. TechCrunch ran the headline, Pinnacle Nexora merger collapses amid patent dispute. The article was light on details, citing only unresolved intellectual property issues and failure to meet closing conditions. The Wall Street Journal was more direct. $485 million deal dies as cloud giant discovers it doesn't own key technology. Richard Blackwood's quote in the journal was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak. While we're disappointed that certain technical issues couldn't be resolved within the merger timeline, Pinnacle remains committed to our innovative cloud solutions and our valued clients. What he didn't mention was that Pinnacle's stock price had dropped 38% in after-hours trading, wiping out nearly $684 million in shareholder value. The company that had fired me for being unnecessary was now facing potential bankruptcy if they couldn't secure a license to use their own core technology. Within 2 months, I had 4 competing offers from major cloud providers who wanted to license my patent. Amazon Web Services offered the most attractive deal, $35 million up front, plus 15% royalties on all implementations. Not bad for a kid from Ohio who used to think Olive Garden was fancy dining. Pinnacle Tech eventually paid $68 million for a non-exclusive license, plus back pay for 6 years of unauthorized use. Richard Blackwood was quietly removed as CEO 4 weeks later, replaced by the company's chief financial officer in what the board called a strategic leadership transition. I used part of my settlement to start a small consulting firm focused on helping individual inventors protect their intellectual property. Dr. Harrison, my old mentor, came out of retirement to serve as my partner. We named it Harrison Reyes Patent Advisory, and our first client was a brilliant young programmer from Detroit who developed a revolutionary approach to artificial intelligence training algorithms. Make sure you file the paperwork, I told her during our initial consultation. Trust me on this. Big companies have a way of forgetting where their best ideas actually came from. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd learned more about business strategy from being betrayed than I had from 11 years of loyal employment. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better and making sure it can never be taken away from you again. These days, I sleep well at night knowing that every line of code I write belongs to me until I decide otherwise. And when young programmers ask me for career advice, I tell them the same thing Dr. Harrison told me. Always have a plan B, because corporations have a way of forgetting that their success stands on the shoulders of the people who actually build things. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel,